All right, we'll get started in just a minute.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, how's it going?
Fine, fine. Thank
All
you.
right.
Hey, hi, Tony.
Hey, give me 1 second, guys. Right before I start, I spilled my drink all over my desk. I gotta have my wife grab me a towel here real quick. So
Okay.
give me
I'm the
one
same way.
second.
Sorry, man. I need to
One
change my
second.
my background too at the same time.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we'll be
give me a
ready. We'll get you
second.
guys taken care of. Oh, give me 1 minute.
Ma- Thanks.
Fíjate bien, aquí no tengo el fondo de Zona 3 Labs en esta cuenta.
Ah, te paso.
¿Me pasas por ti, please?
Ujú.
Mientras, pues buenas tardes a todos en
Buenas
esta
tardes.
sesión de Zona 3 Labs. Hoy vamos a tener un space bastante interesante para todos ustedes que están construyendo productos acá. Nos acompaña Tony Drummond, lo contactamos a través de Olympus, que es esta aceleradora de ACP donde vamos a lanzar un espacio de aceleración en un par de semanas. Y Tony nos va a acompañar a hablar de Tokenomics. Habla solamente inglés, así que vamos a llevar esta charla de esa forma. Sorry, Tony, sorry, changing the switch to English, right, from Spanish.
That's all right. I used to work in manufacturing, and I'm from the US, so I've worked, yeah. I used to, at one point in time, I was the only person who spoke English, believe it or not. So that was extra hard to work in that area, but yeah, it's not a problem at all.
You have a really good vibe, huh?
Yeah,
You have a really good vibe, man.
thanks a lot. All right.
Well,
Well, we'll get started.
uh,
I'm excited. And yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. And sorry, my wife's just helped me out here with this towel, like I was mentioning. And we're going to be covering tokenomics for you guys today. And really, what I'm going to share is going to be a founder's perspective. Okay. So a lot of people approach tokenomics and they haven't done it before. They haven't even launched their own project before, right? And so as you're running your own project, there's some really important things that you as a founder will need to pay attention to, right? Because at the end of the day, what a lot of people will judge your project by is essentially the chart. And that's the unfortunate reality, right? And so as founders, we have to understand how the decisions we're making now are actually setting up our future state from a tokenomics perspective, right? Because ideally, it would be great to launch our token and go up in price, and not to launch our token
yeah.
and go down in price. You see a lot of them kind of lately doing that. And the reason why is because the value is just too high, right? If it was lower, then people would be buying it and be supporting it, right? So the market is saying, we don't believe that token is worth that, and we're not buying it, right? And that's essentially what's happening. And so as founders, if we want that growth, then we need to really understand like how to set up the foundational aspects of this stuff. And that's what we're going to be covering today. Okay. So try my best to speak a little slowly. I can get quick, but I know you're trying to translate in your heads from maybe English to Spanish and things like this. So if you ever have any questions, just let me know. Try our best to move forward. All right. So now, in this presentation, I was very specific by naming it a founder's perspective, okay? Because I wanted to make it so that way you guys can hear my story as a founder and kind of what I went through, which is pretty unique in my opinion, but also kind of painful. And it all actually relates back to tokenomics in a large way as well. So I run a consulting company called Moonbound. I also do a lot of content on LinkedIn, which you may have seen me there. And before I get started, though, I'm just going to share some free things with you guys. All right. So right there, I just shared a tokenomics course and a free template. Okay. So you can use that yourself for free. There's a course that covers a lot of what we're going to talk about today in even more detail. I'm going to give you another course as well. Okay. So this one here is from my other company, Convert, and that's our marketing agency. And right there, what we're really trying to do, hey, thank you a lot. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, over 1,000 people have taken the free course, by the way, in tokenomics. Okay, we just released the Convert course about a week and a half ago. We have over 150 students so far who have done that. And that course covers marketing, community building, and also storytelling or your communication skills. So, and again, that's also free. So hopefully you guys take advantage of that stuff. And my background is in 2021, I started my own project called Micro Pets. to us, it was a fun gaming project. Raised a little bit of money, built our MVP, and kind of launched this little idea out into the world. And it was a small relative market cap of 550,000. Now, after the market kind of gets hold of it, we do some marketing things like this. The project grew to a market cap of over $200 million. That's a 375x. It did that in 3 weeks. The community grew from 0 to 75,000 people as well during that time. And so the reason why you want to be very careful when it comes to tokenomics is, like I just mentioned, that growth, it sounds great, right? Well, if you have a problem, it also grows that quickly. Okay. And so as we grew, we ended up giving out $10.5 million in rewards. Okay. And so the reason why I'm sharing the things I am is because I've lived the pains of what seems like success where you're pumping up, everything's going great. And then also leading right into the bear market, which is at the same time when the selling pressure was quite tough for us. Okay. So I have right now, present state, over 3,500 hours running my own project in this space. I've done everything from build out the full architecture to managing the whole development team to the marketing strategy, the branding, pretty much every little detail like this. I just love learning about all these really cool parts of building like companies, and especially in Web3. My goal today is really to help you understand what factors impact the price of your token better than 99% of founders in our space. So you wouldn't imagine, or maybe you would, because maybe you don't know right now, you wouldn't imagine how few founders actually understand what a liquidity pool is and how it affects the price of their token. And yet they're going to have to put hundreds of thousands of dollars in that someday, if not more. And they're going to have to understand how to set all that up, because that will also actually dictate the volatility in your token price. So these little details like this are extremely important to get right, and they can literally make or break your project. Okay, so that's kind of my goal today, is just to help you guys and just share some alpha, if you will. So now what I want to first cover is, how does a decentralized exchange work? Okay, but before I go into that, the agenda here is going to cover also the launchpad process, which a lot of founders don't understand. You know, how does that whole process work? We're also going to cover some sustainability. Okay, we're going to talk about rewards. I shared my own issues with sustainability. I had to change the whole economy of our project while the whole thing was live, and those are tough conversations to have. And things like this are, pretty challenging to navigate, right? We also have this utility versus speculative volume. Okay, I'm going to show you what actually moves the price in this market, and it's not going to be utility, much to your surprise, maybe. All right, and then we'll have some Q&A throughout this as well. All right, first of all, I want to ask somebody who can tell me what a decentralized exchange is.
Is when you can exchange your tokens from one ecosystem to another.
Close. So if we think about what happens in like a centralized exchange, there's an order book, there's parties trading between each other, right? In the case of a decentralized exchange, it's a pool that has two separate assets inside of it. One of those is, let's say, Ethereum, and the other one is, let's say, the token. Okay, and these two are connected together. So when we're trading, what we're really doing when we're buying, let's say, is we're putting Ethereum in and we're taking tokens out, right? There's less tokens, there's more Ethereum, it raises the value. Okay, when we're selling, what we're doing is we're putting tokens in, we're taking Ethereum out, or ICP, whatever the case might be, and that drives the price down, right? It's a very simple concept, right? It's basically a couple assets that are sitting in this pool. And I'll actually show you guys in a second here. We'll actually go into one and I'll show you where it's at, so you can learn for yourself too and see what's making up the price of the token. All right, the next thing here is, like, let me just go through some quick notes on a DEX. Is, like I mentioned, it enables that automated trading 24/7. So we don't have an order book. We don't need that. We simply need a smart contract with some rule sets inside of it, and these two assets sitting inside of the smart contract for trading. That's it. It also, as I mentioned, the rule sets, it utilizes mathematics to determine the pricing when the swaps occur. Okay, and we'll also learn about how that works. And it holds the assets for the trading pair, such as the tokens in Ethereum, tokens and a stable coin such as USDT, and most are going to be forks of Uniswap V2 or V3. And there are differences between the two separate pools. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just take a second here, and we're going to actually explore a liquidity pool together. Okay, so Many of you are probably familiar with DEX tools, right? And I'm sure you've seen this interface before. Now, you might notice that we have this pair here, okay? This pair is this. It's DEX tools, D-E-X-T, and it's paired with wrapped Ethereum, okay? When wrapped Ethereum goes up in value, even though no buying might even happen, it'll raise the value of DEX tools because it's paired with that asset. In addition to this, if the price of Ethereum were to fall, it brings the price of the token down because, again, it's paired with that. And that's why you'll see some tokens are paired with stable coins, right? Because maybe they don't want that volatility in there. In the bull run, it could be great. In the bear run, it could be very bad. There are things like this that go into the consideration, okay? But that's essentially what we're talking about when we say trading pair. So one token can also have multiple different liquidity pools. So someone could start up another pool that, let's say, has this DEX tools like this inside of it. And you might even see examples of this right here, where you see one has BNB inside of it, right? And you see one has USDT with some liquidity inside of it, right? You could see that. And so again, you can pair the token with anything. But when you're actually doing it for your project, one thing I'll tell you is you want to make sure, let me refresh this. You want to make sure that, first of all, you're ideally creating one liquidity pool for your token. And I'll cover why that's important in a bit, okay? And now we're going to click into this and actually explore the liquidity pool. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And what I want to show you on this over here too, first, is you can see here it says liquidity. $637,000 is sitting here, okay? And we can see it's talking about this, all right? So if I go into this, and look, it's pretty close, right? You could see it's very close to what we were just looking at from a liquidity standpoint. And if we look at what's inside of this pool, we have about $327,000 of DEX tools, and we have about $318,000 of wrapped Ethereum sitting inside of this pool, okay? And so when trading is occurring, what's really happening is assets are going in and assets are coming out, okay? So is this concept pretty clear? Like, this is probably the first time many of you have even seen where the pool is even at, right? And so now you're starting to understand the details, right? And so when you're going to make your token live, you're going to have some money to pair with your token, okay? That's what you're going to have to do. And that is what will set the initial price when you first do this, okay? Like, for example, if I had $100,000 worth of USDT and I had 100,000 tokens and I paired those together, it'd be $1 per token. It's very simple math, okay? So it works out. And keep in mind, what I'm showing you is V2, because V3 gets very complicated. We're not going to go into that because you just need to understand the base fundamentals here, all right? But at the end of the day, you need to understand that there is a liquidity pool here that exists, and that's what's enabling that trading to occur, all right? And then I'm going to show you, now that you guys understand this, I'm going to go back to my presentation just so I don't miss anything. All right, and this is, all right, perfect. This is what I wanted to show you guys next, okay? So let's look at two separate liquidity pools, okay? This is for the same statistics for this token, okay? This token has a total supply of 1 billion. It has a market cap of $1 million, okay? And then there's our price. We can determine that very easily. I take my market cap and I divide it by quantity of tokens, and I'll get the price per token. Very simple, okay? And so now if we look at two separate liquidity pools, keep in mind, this value here is the same between both of these I'm about to show you. One of them has 1% of the supply in the liquidity pool, or about $10,000, okay? So we have $1 million of a market cap, and we have 1% of that, or $10,000, sitting here inside of this pool, okay? And now, just keep in mind, it's still the $1 million market cap, right? You can see what we have in here, $10,000 worth of ETH, $1 million market cap, and 1% of the liquidity, right? This and this are the same value, token, okay, and the Ethereum. Now, when someone sells $10,000, think about this. This only has 10,000 in here. That's going to drain out the whole pool. The whole price will go down significantly in this case, okay, because there isn't enough liquidity to absorb a $10,000 sell, okay? And that's what's going to basically cause the chart to go down significantly, okay? However, if I look at this pool over here, which you can see has more liquidity, the difference is really, this has $10,000 of tokens in Ethereum inside of it. This one has 100,000 of Ethereum and tokens inside of it. The same exact market cap, okay? This has 10%, this has 1%. And now look at the difference here. when a $10,000 sell goes into this, it's going to affect the price significantly less, right? And so you can understand why understanding liquidity is so important when it comes to sustaining volatility and selling pressure and things like this. So as a quick example, if you have some kind of a reward system that's giving out a whole bunch of valuable rewards and people are selling, where are they going to sell that into? Can anyone tell me the answer to that? If someone sells the rewards we give them on the decentralized exchange, what does that take the money? Where's the money come out of? Our liquidity pool. Our liquidity pool, right? If they're selling, if let's say, Christian, let's say I gave you a reward of $1,000 and you sell. What are you doing here? You're taking your $1,000 and you're selling into this and you're going to drop my price down, right? That's what's going to happen, right? That's what's going to happen. If I give you the reward and you sell, right, you'll take that and that'll bring the price down, right? That's essentially what's going to happen. And if we do that for more and more and more people, right, we can't expect to go up in price, right? If we have reward systems, because if those participants start to sell, what will it do? Well, it'll erode this, right? And when this erodes, then it brings our price down. Is this making sense for everyone? Understanding how the liquidity pool is working, right? And that's what it's doing for us. It's really helping enable that trading to occur, like I mentioned. And if there's not a lot of liquidity there, it's going to be more volatile. Okay, now I'm going to show you another example. Now let's look at a buy. Okay, so when we look at a buy, let's say we have $100,000 sitting in that liquidity pool and someone buys $10,000. That's 10%. Okay, it's going to shift the price up a decent amount, about 10%. Okay, not exact math, but around there. Now, if we had over here $1 million in liquidity and someone bought $10,000, it would shift the price up just a little bit, right? Because we have a lot more liquidity here. Okay, now how is this relevant as a founder? Well, think about this. If you put too little liquidity in the pool, you're going to have a whole bunch of volatility. Your price will be all over the place. That'll be very bad. And if you put too much, it's a lot harder to bring in buying pressure to raise the price. Okay, so you can understand why putting too much liquidity could actually affect your marketing efforts, right? So if you're marketing to bring in volume and there's too much liquidity, it's like a skinny guy like me trying to lift a lot of weights. It's going to be difficult. You know, Flacco, that's what they used to call me, right? So it's difficult. It's not going to happen, right? And so what we want to be thinking about is enabling healthy volatility, okay? And this is the essence, in my opinion, of understanding the tokenomics side, especially when it comes to what's going to affect your price out here on the decentralized exchange, which also, by the way, affects your price in the centralized exchange because of what's called arbitrage, where someone can buy here, they can transfer to the centralized exchange and sell and make a profit, things like this. So there's multiple places that could affect you. All right, now, what happens if the LP runs dry? This is also a pretty common question. What if it runs in? What if this whole thing is gone? Well, then nobody can sell anything, and that's what we call a rug. Okay, and that's what happens in a rug is basically the developers. Let me just go to the participants. I just have someone who's coming with some feedback here. There we go. Okay, please mute yourself if you don't mind. All right.
And I'm controlling that in the comments. Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So anyway, going back to this. So what if the LP runs dry, right? What's a rug? Well, a rug is when this liquidity is sitting here, okay, and someone is able to just take all of that and take everything, okay? And that's called a rug. And that's why a lot of projects, you'll hear about them locking the LP tokens, okay? So when the liquidity pool is created, the creator gets these tokens that let them remove the liquidity. Okay, and that's what it lets them do. All right, and so ideally, we want to lock that for protection and security for our community members, right? To emphasize to them that we're trustworthy. Okay, when it's unlocked, anybody at any point in time that has those tokens can take all of the liquidity in this pool. Now, how is this relevant and why is this relevant? Well, first of all, let's pretend time went on and we had over $1 million of additional buying pressure came in and all these tokens were pumped up in price. And this DEX tools thing went to the stars, right? And there's $1 million in here. Well, whoever has those LP tokens can take all of the liquidity and all the full money, okay? And so that ends up being a problem, okay? And so anyway, that's how liquidity works. That's how LP tokens work. And that's also what happens when the whole liquidity pool runs dry. Nobody can trade anything because all the liquidity is gone. And that's what we call like a hard rug, basically, okay? And the next thing I'm going to cover here briefly is going to be the difference between Uniswap v2 and Uniswap v3, okay? And we'll do that through looking at a chart, okay? So v2, so Uniswap basically lets you decide. You can see here, this one says a v2, okay? And let me just pick another random one here. Let's go to this Trump one. There's another v2. I'm sure we'll find one here. That's kind of rare. They're not in v3s. It's actually not that common to be like this. Probably because there are a lot of memes. Let me go to this one. We'll find some. There we go. There we go, V3. Okay, so when we look at V3 and V2, there are two differences, okay? Both of these will have the assets inside of the liquidity pool, as we just showed you, but one of them will enable you to concentrate the liquidity. So what that means is V3 will let you choose your price range. So if someone wanted to concentrate, let's say $200,000 or $300,000 in this range, it would be very difficult to move the price kind of out of that range, right, with a little bit of buying pressure. V2 makes you put your liquidity across the entire price range, right, and spreads all that out. And that's why in V2 you have even more volatility, okay, because it's spread out across the entire price range instead of concentrated towards one given range. I'm not going to go into things more than that because it's difficult to understand, and that should be a course all in of itself. Okay, but there are differences, and that's what I want to make you aware of. All right. Now, does anyone have a question on any of this stuff so far? Christian, I see you talking. There you are.
I have a question, Tony. For example, that is why in some project when they launch a token, they have, for example, a linear release of the token to avoid people to drown out all the contract, drown out all the liquidity, and make this rug pull. This is why make this linear release, right?
100% correct. Yes, because you hit on something that is also really important here. Because if you have that money there and you have tokens to sell, you can also take all the liquidity by selling, right? And so what you mentioned there in that vesting schedule, and we'll go more into some of this stuff in a second here, but the vesting schedule is important because if this releases too quick, like if we look at a vesting schedule, let's say there's a big spike or something like this, you know, and all these things kind of release at once, that then could enable the liquidity to be drained out essentially, okay? I'm going to pull up something. I'm going to show you an example here of one that, this is my favorite one to show. All right. Pull it up 1 second. There we go. Okay. So this Battlemancer's one right here is one of my favorites to show. So if we look at this vesting chart, see this? Okay. So we look at this. You see these all the time in this space, right? But here's the challenge. In the very beginning, we have about 50 million tokens, okay, because the total supply is 1 billion. 3 years later, we have 1 billion. So in 3 years, we're going to deploy 20 times more tokens onto the market, okay? That is pain point number one and problem number one, okay? Problem number two is because of look at what they're releasing to the ecosystem, right? And so if they do this, then the participants who get this maybe as some kind of even a reward, which is the case in this game because it's a game, that's what they're doing. If they get those rewards and they sell into that liquidity pool, they will destroy the price, okay? And point three is because there's no liquidity in the beginning, it's more volatile, right? The prices, okay? So think about this. It's easy to move the price up. And then when we move the price up, we release a bunch of tokens through our inflation, which is worth a lot more money. And then we get sold down into the ground, right? So if you think about this, this project, no matter what it does, it's stuck because if it does a great job marketing and it pumps up the price, all these tokens that will release for the next 3 years will just get dumped down on top of them. And it'll be really difficult to get out of that. Arbitrum is one of them that's going through this right now as an example, where there's a lot of insiders with tokens unlocked that are just selling it. And if you look at the statistics in comparison to other blockchains, you'll see that it actually should be higher value than it is. And that's the reason why. And that's a great question that you had there, Christian, because that lines up exactly with a lot of the issues that many founders kind of build into their tokenomics, if you will. All right. So Uniswap, here, let me go to the next thing. Let's cover the launch process, okay? Actually, before I do that, I want to cover this template really quickly with you all and just some details here. Because I feel like this is probably going to be even more important for you guys. So let's look at what happens with a lot of projects, all right, when they're looking to raise their money, all right? What inflates the value of the project. So if you haven't noticed, there's been a lot of projects listing on Binance lately, and out of the past 30, 29 of them are down 10 to 99% in value from their listing price, okay? And the reason for that, at least that's what I was reading last week. So do your own research on that. But the reason for that is because if you look at this, the fully diluted valuation is so high that the market is saying these tokens aren't worth $400 million, $500 million. So we ain't buying that. That's not worth it. But let's think about what really drives this fully diluted valuation up, because your future ROI will be based off of the fully diluted valuation. It won't be based on your circulating market cap, okay? What I mean by that is if you launch your token at, let's say, a $10 million fully diluted valuation, and you go to 100 million fully diluted valuation, you do a 10x. But instead, you see a lot of projects listing at higher valuations like this, and it's really because they're shoving all this money into the token supply. I'm going to show you how this works right here. So let's say, as an example, I'm looking to raise $1 million, okay? And now I have a fully diluted valuation of $10 million that I'm raising at, okay? So I'm going to sell 10% of my token supply, right, to private, okay? It's a really simple formula. This is 10% of this. That's really as simple as the math is, okay? Let me change this real quick. Okay. All right. Yeah, no problem. So we got here, this is 10% of this. Now let's say, well, we got to raise more money. So now we're going to go and raise $2 million. Well, now look, now we have 20% of our supply we have to sell, right? Because we're at a $10 million valuation here. We can't sell 20% to private. These people will sell us into the ground, right? So we say, as intelligent founders who know better. And so now we go up here and we increase the valuation to 20 million. And now we're back to 10%. So what I want you to understand is you can see how increasing this, right, will also increase this. And then here's what happens next, okay? Now we say, well, when we're on the public round, we have to give these people an ROI, right? Otherwise, why would they buy the token early? Doesn't make any sense. Let's give them a 2x. And now let's go up to $40 million valuation, okay? So now you can see we're at $40 million, okay? Because now we have to give them a 2x. And you can see that the root cause is really because we're shoving all this money here and we're selling the token supply at that value, right? And that forces us to do that. And so in my opinion, I'm always of the opinion that you don't want to raise like millions and millions of dollars if you don't have to, or try and do that. You should raise what you really need. You should build out a budget that covers you for a year or two, and then work off of that instead of just saying, oh, I need to raise 2 million. Because what you're really doing is you're inflating all these later values. And what you're also doing is you're restricting your future ROI, right? Because if we launch at a $40 million valuation, when we go up to, let's say, a $200 million valuation, that's only a 5x, okay? It's a 5x. Now, if I go back to this and I keep it just like this, go back to what I had before, the same $200 million valuation, this now is a 10x, okay? And you can see the difference. And so these small tweaks like this that might seem like, oh, it's just double what it was. And then as you extrapolate that out across higher market cap valuations as your project grows, you'll see how you actually will diminish your ROI, if this is making sense, right? Because you'll have your valuation too high. And that's what's happening with a lot of these projects. They say, well, we have to raise $10 million and, oh, we can't sell 100%. So we got to sell 10%, right, to private investors. So now we're here. And then now we have to give these people an ROI and give them a 2x. And now we're at 200 million. Now, for a project like this, to even 5x has to go to $1 billion. And that's why people aren't buying them right now, is there's really no reason to put your money into something like this, right? Unless you have really strong conviction for years. You know, it really isn't worth it. And so hopefully you're understanding the connection between the money that you're raising and how it's influencing the allocations, right? All right. The next thing I want to cover is this cliff and this vesting point in time too, because these are also really important. So current state in the market, a 12 and 36, I wouldn't recommend it because that's going to be very tough to raise money these days. People want even shorter cliffs. So I would go something that maybe even has like a 12-month cliff and like a 24-month vesting or 18 to 24 months. That way, people don't feel like they're waiting 3 years because that is not going to work now. I would not give any unlock a TGE to a private round. Your team round, this one is completely up to you. I do recommend having a minimum of a year cliff with this, okay? And then you can decide how long you want to vest it off of that. Usually, though, you're going to be at minimum about 3 years investing, okay? That's usually the average. Your marketing allocation, why is this important? Well, because there's people that will actually be paid in tokens that will be helpful. And then that will help you actually conserve some of your fiat and cash, okay? I want to emphasize this, though. If your liquidity pool is empty, you have no money, okay? Right? Think about it. You got tokens that are worth millions of dollars, don't matter. The pool is empty, centralized exchange is empty, there's nothing there. You have $0. And this is something, again, many people don't get, and that's why I am fanatical about the liquidity, okay, and making sure that there's liquidity there. Because again, I've ran a project before, and I know that it's all about liquidity, okay? It's not the value you have in your tokens. The next thing here is the development side. So you might want to break out, 10% or so is usually pretty common for development. Just depends on what you're doing. And by the way, you don't have to follow all these numbers. I wouldn't recommend it. This is all custom to the project, by the way. Your public sale and your DEX liquidity here, this, in my opinion, I always try and get public a really great percentage of the allocation because I'm a big believer in the philosophy that this should be a community first type of project. We're building a real community. We're not just enabling insiders just to get in here and dump on everyone. That's not my vibe or mindset, really. So I like it where the public has a great chance at acquiring a good chunk of the supply, all right? And also, your liquidity needs to be designed, okay? Don't follow anyone's advice like it should be 1% or 2%, whatever. What you want to do is design that, and that's something that you'll want to work with an expert on versus just guessing at it. What you'll probably want to do instead is just make this in the interim something like liquidity, and then just leave it like this, because this could go on the decentralized exchange. It could also go onto the centralized exchange as well, okay? So you could always rename that a little bit if you like as well. And then this year, I already had broken out for centralized exchange listings, okay? It is important to make sure you have those. So when you list on a centralized exchange, they're going to charge you, depends on the exchange. Usually it's at minimum around $30,000, and they're going to ask you for an allotment of tokens. That way they have liquidity on the centralized exchange. That's going to be necessary. So if you don't have tokens, you cannot list. And the next thing here is growth incentives. These could be like giveaways or incentives like this. Again, I would make sure that this is done sparingly. That way we're not just giving out big airdrops and getting sold into the ground. By the way, that's why these airdrops are largely failing that you see is projects do all these airdrops, then they release all this tokens and people sell. And then the community's dead. It's a ghost town and the project is in shambles. And everyone's like, what happened? Well, the people who are active were just there to make the money. When the money's gone, they're gone. That's what happened. It's actually not rocket science. And you think about it, right? And once they basically stripped away the liquidity from the market and the centralized exchange and the decentralized exchange. And that will drive the value down. That's actually what's happening. And that's why when you do an airdrop, you want to be very careful. Okay. And by the way, this template here is fully automated. So everything I was just changing over here in these settings, it was actually automatically changing all this for you guys as well. So now you have a complete template that's pretty sweet, if I might add, that you can use anytime you want to really iterate and do different options and things like this. And also, like I mentioned, it has the course and things like this in there for you guys to take as well. Okay. So that's the tokenomics side of the equation. In the template. And one last thing I want to cover too is when it gets into kind of like the circulating, okay, and this inflation. So just visually looking at this, you can tell that the inflation here is actually pretty good. If this were down here, just like the battle mancers I showed you before, remember what's happening is you're releasing tokens so fast that it's going to be very difficult for the market to absorb that potential selling pressure. And then that is what will restrict your growth, okay? So hopefully you found this helpful. And one last thing, I do want to mention, and I always show this one as an example here. Nothing against any project. It's just the one that I've been able to find that makes the best point of this. Now, you might notice, wow, millions of dollars. This project must be very wealthy, right? Like this must be doing extremely well, just looking at this. However, they have about $15,000 in the liquidity pool. This project is unfortunately gone. You could see the tokens are worth money, right? So imagine being an investor and having tokens that are worth money and not being able to get any money out. Wouldn't that be a scam, right? And so that's why, again, as an ethical founder, liquidity is extremely important, because the people who believed in you when you had nothing, that are planning on getting some kind of a return on their investment, should be able to do so, but without destroying the whole project. Okay, that's the philosophy, at least I have. There should be a return for the early people that participated and helped, but not to a point where it destroys everyone that's also participating as a community member and leaves the project in shambles. Okay, and so this is an example. I'm not sure all the specifics what happened, but you can see in this example that these tokens are worth millions of dollars. There's no liquidity for this project here. And we could even check on this if we wanted to go into this. And I'll show you how to do that real fast. I'm going to pull up this, my other monitor. I'll bring it over in a second here. All right. We're going to go into this and we're going to search for this. And we're going to look at the liquidity pool. Okay. $3.89. It's at the pool. Okay. So you can see most of it, those are token. Okay. So it has $3.89 worth of USDT liquidity sitting inside of the pool. So those tokens that are worth millions are actually worth nothing. Okay. Now, here's why this is extra relevant for yourselves as founders, is because if you have a marketing allocation that you think is going to be worth money and there's nothing there, you actually have $0. You have no budget. You're broke. Okay. And so you really want to make sure, again, you're building that liquidity pool up that will enable you to utilize these tokens to their fullest advantage. Okay. And actually fund your project and move it forward. Okay. So I just want to show these as some examples here, some live ones from the wild, if you will. All right. Now, I want to talk about this launch process. Okay. So there's like a step order process that you as a founder want to follow when it comes to actually launching your project. Okay. So I'm going to show you just explain a really quick example. So sure, some of you have been on launch pads before, right? Where you go on the launch pad, you participate in the community, maybe you get whitelisted, you buy the token, then you wait, then you can claim them, right? And then it's live and you can even sell or buy more on the decentralized exchange. That's how they work, right? That's the normal process. The launch pad, they market that. After that's over, then they're live on the decentralized exchange. That's the normal step order process, okay? What's really happening is the team is putting their tokens on the launch pad. They're selling some of those to people. They're taking some of that money, and that money is what they're using to create the liquidity pool, okay? So they're using that launchpad to raise the money for liquidity, okay? And one side note is you must have money for marketing on a launchpad. You will not be able to go on there and list and just raise $500,000. So many people have that dream. Be nice if it was that easy. It's not. You're going to raise your money through your community, okay? And the launchpad is just going to be a vehicle that can help propel that forward even more and help drive trust even, okay? Because that's going to enable the trust of saying, all right, when the liquidity is moving, it's going to go to the pool and things like this instead of just a scam or whatever. All right, so the launchpad process, what you want to think about as a founder, if we just go back to, let me just go back to this. Actually, let me see if I have like there's so many different things that I've done over the years. I'm just going to make a new one. Okay. All right. So here's our launchpad round, right? We're marketing here and we're raising our money right here. This is step number one. Okay. Right here. All right. Now we go to step number two. And then now we're going to be on the decentralized exchange right here. Okay. That's the DEX. Okay. So we're going to put our token live here. Well, what I want to emphasize is these two steps, like the gap between this, because right here it's live. The token can be bought and sold on the DEX right here at this point in time. Okay. So if we think about this, if we've extracted a lot of value from our community and they've put in and bought tokens, everything else, and we immediately go into this, where is the new value going to come from on the launch that will ascend us higher? Where will our new buying liquidity come from? it won't come from anywhere, okay? And that's going to be a problem. And so when you're looking at your launch pad, what you want to do is raise your round, ideally close it out quickly, and then give yourself a gap of about 2 to 3 days or even longer between the point you're done here and when you're here. Why? Because you're going to market and bring in even more people into that community, okay? And the reason for that is because now when you're live on the decentralized exchange, there's new buying demand, okay? Because the last thing you want to do is extract all this value and everyone who bought could, and no one else has any more money to put in or whatever, right? And then you're live here and you're like, all right, everyone buy. Well, they already did. And they bought at the cheapest price. They're not going to buy, right? And so it's the stuff I'm showing you are, it's a step order process to understanding how to launch the token effectively, right? And so this is a really important one here. And this is why, if you've noticed the fair launch models, they raise a bunch, they're on here for a week, everyone's buying, and then they finally launch on the decentralized exchange and the price goes down, right? Well, why does that happen? Because in the fair launch, it's raising the price more and more and more, right? And then finally it lists here and everyone who could have bought did, and no one's buying, and then there's no volume coming in. And now, why is volume so important? Well, because when you do this, people are buying at the cheapest price, and some people will sell to get an ROI, right? So if you don't have any new buying volume coming in, that distribution cannot occur, and you're only going to go like this, okay? That's only what's going to happen, because people will say, hey, price isn't moving anywhere, I'm bored, and now I'm selling and I'm out, right? That will happen. And so that's why, as I mentioned, that gap, you want to design that to your advantage. So you build the community and you have that buying pressure and demand built up so you can ascend in price, okay? And so that's why that is so important to do. I'm going to skip a couple of these things here. We also want to make sure that we have some sniper protection as well. So when you first create that liquidity pool, there's sniper bots that could even buy that up. I'm not going to go into tons of details, but it is something important that you might want to keep in mind. And as I mentioned, you want to market heavily between the funding close and the launch on the deck. So we need a lot of volume there, millions of dollars of volume in most cases, okay? I'll just emphasize that. On our launch, we had about $3 million in volume, like right away, okay? Right away. And we sold out our launchpad round, which is $250,000 in 1 minute. It was gone, okay? And that's how you want to do it. Whole launch pad is gone. People complaining they couldn't get in. Perfect. Now we're live on the decentralized exchange. We got buying volume. That's how you do it. Okay. So, because that's the right way to work. If you go opposite, people will just sell off and your project could even die from this. That's serious. So the next thing is you also want to budget 15 to 20% of the public round for marketing. Okay. So if you're going to raise $1 million, you're going to need 10 to 20% of that for marketing. Okay. I know I have 15 here. 10 to 20% is a good metric. Okay. This is if you want to be even safer. Okay. So you're going to have to spend money to raise money. And that's the nature of the space. Sometimes good partnerships can help you get past that and cheapen that. Also internal marketing and things like this, but it's pretty common. And like I mentioned, do not believe you can just list on a launch pad and you'll raise all this money. It will not happen. Okay. Unless you're very lucky. All right. So the next thing here, if I continue along, is we're going to talk about sustainability. Okay. So sustainability, I have an example I'm going to show you guys here. And I'm going to go ahead and play this out. But what we want to look at here is, first of all, just a common reward system you might see. We have 2,000 users of our system. They're spending $50 worth of tokens in a month in utility. And so as a company or a project, we're going to generate $100,000 worth of revenue, okay, the first month. And we're going to take 80% of that and distribute that as incentives to our community, and 20% will go to the project as an example. We can see the split off that happens here. Now, keep in mind, this is another mistake. Projects saying, hey, this is our revenue. It's not. Again, you only have what you can pull out. Okay, so if you have $1 million in tokens, just as the example we saw a little bit ago, but there's no money anywhere to be extracted, you have no money. You're broke. You have nothing. Okay, so always keep this in mind. So it's smarter then to ideally have people buying these tokens to use them. That way, if you do decide to sell a fraction of those, most of that value will still remain within that pool, right? That's a pretty sustainable growth standpoint, okay? And now, however, in this case, if we're giving out 80% of this as incentives and rewards, and a good chunk of people sell, which we're about to see happen here, we'll actually notice that we'll have some selling pressure, right? And so this is the selling pressure that will start to kick in. Some people will hold, some people will sell, okay? And how we split this off will ultimately dictate what will happen, okay? So if we give more incentives out to community members that we know will probably sell, right? Then we should expect a lot more selling pressure. However, if we retain more tokens for the project, then we should expect less selling pressure, okay? And this is the simple philosophy that I want you to keep in mind. And also, if these tokens are being bought from somewhere on the market to be used, that's very beneficial for the system, okay? Because if these participants still sell, well, assuming not everyone is selling, right? Because some are holding here, some of this value that was bought will be retained, okay? And that's called sustainability, all right? And that's what we're really talking about, is giving away more value than we're taking into the project, okay? And that's not sustainable. Now, what I want to show you here is, if I just played this out a little bit, we could see that this could actually grow pretty quickly from a selling pressure standpoint. As we have more users coming in, we have the same average amount of them using $50 worth of the token a month, and we can see our selling pressure starting to build, right? And so is our revenue and things like this. But this is kind of lopsided, right? We have a lot more selling pressure than we actually have as revenues, essentially here. I'm going to stop this in a second here. I'm going to play out the rest of this. There we go. I'm going to stop it here. We could see it got up to like 1.3 million. So again, this can actually, as you grow your project and your user base, you can scale your selling pressure. And that's what I wanted to show you there. And so when I had my project and I had a game, okay, play to earn games is very common. And what I ended up doing instead, just talk to you guys like this. What I am doing instead of actually like doing this common reward system, right, where you have more players, more sellers, and more selling pressure, right? I'm like, why would I spend 6 months making a game to market the whole thing, to give out all these tokens for people just to sell me into the ground? And everyone was doing it at the time, right? And everyone was doing it, right? You have more players, you got more selling pressure. It's like, this can't work. And I had just been through all the pains I went through of my own project with our tokenomics before that point. I said, well, we learned from our mistakes, right? We're not going to do it again. And so what we ended up doing was creating a raffle system. Okay. So they played the game, they earned a coin, they could convert the coin to an 1155 token. So it wasn't something that could be sold, and they could use 10 coins to buy a raffle ticket. So if we think about this, now I have this kind of like game of chance. I've created a game within a game. Okay. And what I've also done is no one's getting something that they can then just sell, right? And so now I have a scalable reward system that will grow outside of the actual player base from a sustainability standpoint. So it's not like when I add more users, I have more selling pressure. I don't. Okay. And that's the thing you want to be thinking about from a philosophical level, right? If you add more users, you will have some selling pressure. But if all of it is selling pressure, you want to do the math and figure out, are you actually going to sell yourselves into the ground as you get these people onto your system? And figure out the math of the value of what you're giving out to them, and do the math in this and look at the numbers and ask if it makes logical sense. In my case, as I mentioned, within 3 months, I think it was 2 or 3 months, $10 million plus in rewards, 10.5 million. That's what we gave out. Okay. In our liquidity pool, by the way, I didn't share this. We deepened that pool like you wouldn't believe. We had over $30 million inside the liquidity pool. Believe it or not, it was crazy how thick that pool was. It was absolutely nuts. And even that was really difficult to sustain the selling pressure. Okay. And so things like this are like really, really important. That's why I wanted to show you guys and talk about the sustainability. Because again, all you need to understand, if you're designing a system and people will get tokens and maybe sell them, and you scale that, you want to figure out, will that sell us into the ground, and will that destroy us? Okay. And that's something that a lot of projects kind of get wrong. Okay. Because again, the liquidity pool and the centralized exchange needs to be able to sustain the selling pressure when those tokens are actually sold, if that does happen. All right. Now I'm going to go into just some sustainability notes. So like we mentioned, reward systems link directly to value creation on your platform. I'm going to give you a very simple statement. When value is created, value can be given. No other time. Okay. So when value is created, then give value. Don't just give value to people for mindlessly trading a little bit of money back and forth to generate some airdrop. That is not going to work. Okay. That will go down significantly, in my opinion, over time. The next thing is the vested allocations do not destroy the liquidity pool from selling pressure. Like we talked about with the rewards. If you're giving out a lot of rewards, and this was also something Christian asked, give out a lot of rewards, and the selling happens, it's going to strip the liquidity from the market. It's going to drive our price down. No way around that. And ideally, have a way to make fiat without selling your own token. Why? Because if you get that token as revenue, which some like to call it, and you don't want to sell that, right, and destroy your price and have to be selling, like, you won't believe how many projects show me their revenue figures and say we'll have millions in revenue. I say, you know how much it'll destroy your price if you sell $1 million? You know what I mean? It's your liquidity pool, most cases, or even on the centralized exchange with most of your projects, it will literally destroy your whole project. You don't have $1 million, you have nothing, right? And so this is some of the things that you have to be really mindful of when it comes to the tokens, okay? So, all right. So I just showed you guys some examples here. And the other thing is like just some questions and thoughts. So if the liquidity runs dry, where will the project get the funds for development and marketing? This is where the budgeting and being mindful of your fiat comes into play. If a chunk of the supply is released, what is the value of it and will they sell? Very simple question you should be asking yourself. And are incentives helping us reach our goals or simply benefiting holders or worse, sellers? Okay, so this again, in my opinion, is really important. This goes back to the airdrop philosophy where you've seen these projects doing this. Some people will cherry pick out one example where it worked, and then there's a whole graveyard full of bodies, right? Like if someone found the one outlier where it worked, it did great, and that's the one they talk about. They don't ever mention the whole graveyard literally filled with bodies where it didn't work out when they're giving their examples of why airdrops are a useful marketing strategy. Okay, and the next thing is, where is funding to run the project coming from? Are tokens being sold? Okay, so remember back a few years ago, there used to be a lot of taxes and trading in tokens and things like this. That's not so much the case anymore. That used to be a way to generate revenue. Now it's primarily going to come from even selling NFTs, things like this. It's going to come from even selling some of your token allocations. If you have a healthy liquidity pool that can absorb that, that's where you're going to get your funding from, in all honesty, as well. And that's why I've spent 60% of the presentation today talking about liquidity, is because at the end of the day, if you don't understand that, you will have nothing at the end of the day because you're not understanding how to maintain that liquidity, right? Make sure it gives you the necessary lifeblood to fund your project and to keep it moving forward. The next thing I want to show you here really quick is why most of this market is basically propped up by speculative volume, not utility. Okay, we're going to look at this. So Filecoin is one example I like to use. We have here a market cap of $2 billion, okay? And fully diluted is $7 billion. Now, I'll bet not even $100,000 of Filecoin was used in the past 24 hours to store files, okay? A very small fraction of it. Yet, look at the trading volume. So if we were to divide 100,000 by this, we would see it's a very, very, very small fraction of it, okay? So most of the volume and demand side is going to come from, for your project and your token, is going to be from speculative volume. These are people who are buying it because they see the future opportunity, okay? And if your token doesn't have any utility, why would they think there's an opportunity? They wouldn't, okay? And so as an example, I had one founder I was talking to recently that was asking me, hey, Tony, our price isn't going up. What are we going to do? And I said, hey, you don't have any utility. There's no reason to even own this. And second of all, let me ask you a question. I said, tell me why I should buy it today instead of tomorrow. Like, why is it going to be worth more why is it going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today? Why should I buy it right now? Just tell me now why. And he couldn't answer it. He's just sitting there. And that's a function of not understanding the fact that over time, we want the price to grow, right? We have to show opportunity. And we can't get opportunity if our value when we launch is way too high. There's no growth off of this, right? And all the conversations, all the things I'm trying to share with you today also link back to that, is what we're selling in this market is opportunity, okay? In the future of technology, we need tokens that are actually useful, that are used to do real things, not just things used to extract liquidity, okay? They do real things, but never forget that the vast majority of your liquidity is going to come from speculative volume, okay? And the only way these people are going to buy into something, especially if they're good investors, is they'll first look at your liquidity and see how that is, right? Because people say, wow, wouldn't it be great? Like I'll just tell you, I'm not bragging. It wasn't uncommon to have a $50,000 buy, a $40,000 buy, a $100,000 buy my project. The reason for that is because there was liquidity. Somebody can put in money and get tokens out without losing a whole bunch of tokens due to slippage, right? If you have a liquidity pool, with only a fraction of dollars, a small amount of money inside of it, someone can't buy that token because they'll shift the price up so significantly and they'll lose so much value in the process. People who have money in this space don't buy things like that because they're smart. They didn't get their money by not being smart, okay? And so that's why it's also, again, really important to be thinking about this liquidity. All right, now I'm going to go back to our presentation here. And, you know, liquidity and fundamentals is really important. And also your ability to bring in new buyers through marketing. Like we mentioned, this is the speculative volume that will drive most of this. And creating a growing and engaged community of holders is extremely important. And your roadmap also links back to this stuff as well. Your roadmap doesn't have anything coming out for the next year. Don't expect people to be buying, right? Why would it buy? There's no reason to do that right now, right? I can wait and see what they do next, right? And so keep in mind, don't rush. Take your time and run the numbers, okay? There's no need to rush anything in here. This is going to decide a lot of your fates. Tokenomics will, okay? Too high valuation, no opportunity. No liquidity, volatility, no good, right? So take your time, do it right. Ask for help if you need it, by the way, too. Take my training course. That's free. All you need to do is spend an hour. Even if you got to watch it 10 times to understand it, I assure you, this is well worth it. And the next thing is just keep learning, just like you're doing today. Thanks for attending the session and taking time out of your day here just to learn more and hear me speak and kind of share some of my thoughts and things like this. So, and at the end, in addition to this, I'm going to drop another thing for you guys for free as well. All right. There we go. This is a free checklist you can have that I just showed on the screen here. And this checklist basically covers 175 actionable items to prepare, launch, and scale in Web3. Not saying you have to do all this. Don't be overwhelmed. But reading through this might make you do some mental notes and say, good point, good point, good point. And if you just take some time and read this, even translate it in your own language, I assure you, you're going to find a lot of points in this that will be really important basically to focus on, okay, for your project. So even looking at like community development, things like this, you know, bot protection. So many projects don't even have bot protection I see in the space, and development, things you need to know about that. Okay, so all this again is a bunch of free resources for you guys today just for showing up. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah,
we got some
it.
question for you, Tony, because
Okay.
there are a lot of interest around your talk, Tony. I got, for example, here, Richard says, Tony, can you explain how a private sales work, how it executes? Thanks.
Sure. Yes. So private sales, in most cases with like investors, you're going to have contractual agreements. So you'll determine what your budget is. You'll determine what you want to start, how much money you want to raise. And then you'll go out and start messaging investors to try and raise that money. You'll have a pitch deck and you'll be going through the normal VC processes. Another way you can do it, which is the way I did it, is you raise less money to build an MVP. Sometimes this is called like a friends and family round. In our case, we raised $100,000. We simply put together a Telegram chat of our friends and colleagues in the space, and we raised money and we shared them what we were building. They were interested in it. We raised money. We sold them a portion of a token supply, and then that was it. And it's really that simple. So what you're doing is you're selling tokens to people privately before you're live on the launch pad and before the decentralized exchange. That's what you're doing, okay? And I also cover this in the free video course on tokenomics as well. There's a private sales section in there that explains this. All right.
Thank you, Tony.
Next question.
Francisco has another question. I don't know, Francisco, it's a large question. Francisco, ¿quieres mencionarla o quieres que la digamos nosotros?
Hola, ¿cómo están todos? Saludos de nuevo, muy interesante. Hi, Tony, how are you? It's
Good.
about Filecoin. It is a very interesting case for me. Filecoin, some year ago, launches a program for subsidizing the price of Filecoin for mass adoption in their platform, but it it requires to some operators of processing filing that accept some kind of agreement for maintaining the price of file token low, but the foundation gives them some subsidies for maintaining the infrastructure. How do you think that it affects the future growth of the platform and the price dynamics? Thanks.
Yeah, that's one I'd have to actually look at in more detail, to be honest with you, just because there's some moving pieces. What I hear is similar to like a node sale, which are sometimes becoming popular, where you'll have a node that you're operating and you'll be able to earn some tokens off of this, some way, shape, or form. Here's my broader opinion on things like this. They can work, but you have to make sure you have a ton of network activity. Okay. And so, Francisco, maybe your question is linking back to the network activity, because if there isn't a whole lot of network activity going on, then it's essentially like emissions and rewards, right? But it's actually not real value creation on the network. I'm guessing that's what you're asking about. So in my opinion, the only way these networks are actually going to be valuable is if they get a lot of people using it consistently. And that's where I would go to something like a token terminal, I think has the information like this, where you might even be able to see how much Filecoin is used in the fees. In all honesty, it's not a project where I dive deep into it. I just use it as an example. Okay. So you probably know a lot more than I know about that particular one. But that's one thing I wanted to highlight is this node sale, this concept where you can have these validators operating and earning tokens and things like this. That works. But think about it. If tokens are being emitted, there needs to be a demand side on the other side where people are buying this, right, to support that, or else there's no way for the ecosystem to go up in value if participants sell. Okay. And that's what we went back to when we looked at that sustainability example, right? In the exact case, there's no buying demand there on the other side. You know, like if Filecoin had tons of buying demand and the network was really active and there was like competition between the nodes, things like this, then that would be valuable, right? But I'm guessing it's the opposite. It's going to take time to spin it up probably consistently too. So, yeah.
Thanks, Tony. I perfectly understand you.
Good.
It's as you say that they are looking for the growth of the network activity and attracting more users to their service. I don't know how it will become in the future, but recently they getting good results with the evaluation of the platform. I guess that they are achieving their objective on this now.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll see, because even when here's the thing is, remember, most of the volume when it comes to project price success, most of the volume is going to come from speculation, not the usage, right? And so we should expect, when the market heats up, Francisco, this is what I would expect. Okay. If the market heats up and they've done a great job now of building and getting partnerships and getting activity, they're going to ascend that much higher. Okay. Because then they have something they can market, right? But if, let's say, the market started to turn around on altcoins and liquidity started to go into the alts and there was nothing exciting to talk about, they wouldn't go anywhere, right? And so that's really what it boils down to. Is there's in the free course that I gave you, I know I gave you guys a couple ones, but in the Convert one, there's actually a marketing section. And in there, I talk about this concept of intrinsic value and perceived value. Okay. And that's what he's asking about. The intrinsic value is like, what's it actually worth? What can I measure? What can I quantify? And the perceived value is what the market thinks it's worth. Okay. And there's many examples of these. Not going to throw projects on, in here of ones that are not the best, let's say. But yeah, I'll take one more question if you guys wouldn't mind.
I have a question, Tony. I think it's really good for entrepreneurs. What is your opinion about the meme coins and your utility right now with some ecosystems to raise liquidity into the ecosystems? Do you think it's a great strategy to meme coins or something like that?
I think it can be really good, because at the end, as long as it's done ethically, granted, there's a lot of scams and stuff. That's the part that I'm not a fan of. Okay. I've been a community member of meme coins and stuff like this. I've been in there. To me, they're a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Not something that I work with now because I can't help a meme coin founder really with my consulting business. nothing there. But I do believe it's a really cool way to bring in more people, because at the end of the day, a friend tells a friend about a meme coin, or like what I started seeing. Actually, I started seeing some of my friends post like how much money they were making on these dog coins. Okay, like, wow, you can make all this money on a dog coin. I saw this on Facebook, and I'm like, all right, let me start checking this out. And I went into here. So it's like these are things that actually act as the pipelines. But at the end of the day, if you're a professional, like I consider myself a professional, I like professional projects. I might still gamble on a meme and have fun. I still like to have fun, right? But I'm not going to go all in like some of these people and put 100 grand inside of this thing. I'm going to, be looking at more reasonable opportunities that are out there in the market of DeFi projects and protocols and things that I like as a technical guy that I believe in the long term, right? That's where I'm going to invest, and I'm going to play and gamble in the other area. And that's fine. As long as people aren't scamming, it's all good. It's a lot of fun. Brings a lot of value to our space. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. Well, we really appreciate your time here in Zona Labs with all our entrepreneurs working in projects into internet computer protocol. So really, thank you so much, Tony. You transmit a really good vibes in this space. I think it's really cool. So thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure. We have the time with you. Invite you in some months to see all the projects forming here into Zona Lab. So you are invited to come here in this project. So I don't know. I think it's here. Diana, you want to say something here in the space?
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for sharing your valuable insights of tokenomics for entrepreneurs. Your expertise has provided us with deeper understanding in this topic, and thank you for sharing your course. It's a valuable resource. Thank you very much.
You got it. And it's a pleasure to be here with y'all. And I'll drop one last thing for you. So this is just my LinkedIn. If you want to follow me there, I post on this stuff all the time. Okay. So if you liked you don't have to have a whole hour of it, but you can get about a minute of it a day of just founder guidance. That's exactly what my LinkedIn is all about. So I cover a lot of different topics: tokenomics, marketing, strategy, community building, a whole bunch of different things. So that's a simple way. Just if you liked some of the things I shared today and you want to follow me and just stay in touch, that's the way to do that. Okay. So thank you everyone for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Take care. Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye.